Hey, JT.
How you doing, Dakota?
Doing well.
Hello, Cody. Hello, John.
Hey, Herb.
How are you, Herb?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not bad at all. I am not, of course, Jason Fotenauer, but let me see if I can change my name here. Still remain as host. That would be important.
Boom.
Yep, I am.
Tiernan sent an email. He will not be able to make tonight's meeting.
Okay. I am pleased to see Lance Rudiger here. Hello, Lance. And Kevin's iPad. Who might Kevin's iPad be? Oh, Kevin
Kevin.
Akers. Thank you.
Kevin Akers. Yes.
How are you, everybody?
Doing well, sir. And yourself?
Good. So I'm interested to hear the about the fish ladder in Madrid or prospects for the dam or its demise. So I did pass on the information to the town of Madrid members.
Yes.
So they may be joining us. Some of them, I don't see anybody yet, but maybe they'll be listening in.
Good. I had also spoken to Tony Cooper, town supervisor, and gave him the invite information and asked him to get in touch with members of his board and anybody else he thought was appropriate to sit in.
Good. I'm hoping that Alex Smith, because Alex worked for Brookview and was involved in 3 of those projects, Hewelton, and there's 2 other ones for the fish ladder. So he would have the experience and expertise that maybe he can comment. So I'm hoping he joins with us.
Okay.
Smith. Okay.
John, can you hear me?
I can. Who's speaking? Is that Lance?
Yeah, it's me. I'm not sure. How come my picture's not coming up?
Are you on a phone or are you on a computer?
Computer.
If you take your cursor down to the towards the bottom left, there should be you should see a microphone and then a video.
Yep.
Okay. And the video might say stop video
Oh, there
or
we go.
start video. There you go.
Hey.
It's a pleasure to see you, Lance.
Hey, thanks, John. Good pleasure to see you. Looks like it's foggy in here, but it's not.
Well, it's that soft mood lighting you've got.
Oh, there we go.
I think you're burning something, Lance. That's what I'm thinking.
No, I had a spotlight here that shines on the keyboard that's very, very close to the computer. And when I turn it on, it washes out the photo. Turn it off and it's not.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, you know. Although my neighbor across the street, I live about 2 houses from the state police. My neighbor across the street was arrested for selling drugs. So
Really?
It'll be all legal by April 1st. So
Well, weed might be, but there's plenty of other things that people sell. Okay. Let's give people another minute or 2, and then we'll get started. Kat Bennett has not joined us yet. She's the EMC chair. Don O'Shea has not joined us yet. He usually does so by phone. I don't see him here. Pat Whalen, if you'd like to run the meeting, okay. Pat is the secretary of the EMC. Pat, do you have the an agenda? May I
Hang
ask,
on, John. I'm working on it.
okay, may I ask who is Evan, please?
Hi, this is Evan Renwick. Dan Huntley invited me to this meeting.
That's fine. I just wanted to, I'm going to rename you with your whole name. What's your last name, please?
Renwick?
Renwick.
Correct.
Thank you. And Jana Lantry is here. Good evening, Jana.
Hello, how is everyone?
Well, thanks for joining us.
Pat, if you want to, anytime you want to get the meeting started, go right ahead. I might suggest that we call out people's names as you see it and just let them introduce themselves briefly. EMC members and then guests. Alexander Smith is entering.
John, how many people do we have on board?
I'm writing that up. I'll tell you in a second whether or not we have a, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right now we have 7 EMC members. So we do not yet have a quorum.
Okay, I'm going to need you to help me, John, because I can't do everything here with all the equipment I've got here.
Okay. Well, we don't yet have a quorum, so why don't we go around the room, as it were, and introduce ourselves. I will call people out. On my top left is Dakota Casserly. Dakota, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Well, as John said, my name is Dakota Casserly. I'm another staff planner for the county and helping out with EMC and helping with one of the subcommittees in the Environment and Economy Committee in terms of us progressing on that end, which you'll hear a bit more later in the meeting.
Great. On my screen, I'm next. I'm John Tenbush. I work for the County Planning Office, and I'm also staff to the Environmental Management Council. Herb Bullock, you're next.
Hello, hi, I'm Herb Bullock. I live in Canton and have an interest in learning all about what the EMC is doing and a potential EMC member. Yeah, I'm really interested in this topic tonight.
Okay.
Listening.
All right. Next on my screen is Kevin. Kevin's iPad. This is Kevin Akers.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Akers. I'm the legislator that represents Madrid in the rural parts of Canton and Potsdam between 345 and Route 11. Herb, are you Glenn's dad?
Close. Glenn's son. Well, there's 2 Glens. My father was Glenn, and my nephew, Glenn, works in the USDA office.
Okay. I know your son. I know your nephew, Glenn.
Okay. We call him Jeff, but I think that actually his middle name.
That would be one of the more pleasant names he's been called lately. So.
All right. And next on my screen is Sue Rao. You're muted, Sue.
Hi, I'm a EMC member. I'm a member of the Invasive Species and Conservation of Resources Committees, and I raise certified organic vegetables.
Thank you, Sue. Next is Lance Rudiger.
I'm Lance Rudiger, and I've been a member of the EMC for quite a while. I'm on the Watershed Committee, Water Resources. And being a fisherman for a number of years, I am really interested in this topic. Just so, you know, for a little background, I think this is really interesting. I gave a talk down on Falls Island. And when the people first came to Canton in 1804 till about 1830, there were extremely strict rules about quality of water and polluting the water because they were catching salmon from all the way up to Russell. And in order to maintain their food supply, people were really, really concerned about maintaining the river and making sure that the fish supply wasn't damaged in any way. After that, that, of course, it went to about the 1890s, in which the river was so polluted that there's pictures of buildings in Canton in which they built rooms off the building over the river, which was the bathroom that had no bottom plumbing. So they just went into the same water, into the Grass River.
I've seen
So
that
we
in
went
some camps
from-
today.
We went from huge laws on the books about the quality of water to that bad
Yeah.
situation, back to probably pretty crystalline waters now.
Okay,
So I thought you might be interested.
thank you, Lance. Next on my screen is Tony Cooper.
Howdy, folks. I'm Tony Cooper. I'm the supervisor for the town of Madrid, and I represent the dam. Well, I represent the people. How's that?
All right,
And we're interested in hearing about a topic that has been discussed before in the community. We're glad to finally be a part of this conversation. The
All right.
town of Madrid is.
thank you, Tony.
Look forward to listening.
All right, next up is Pat Whalen.
Yeah, I'm a member of the EMC for a long time on the Conservation of Resources Committee, Invasive Species, former DEC forester. That's about it.
Thank you, Pat. Next up is Nicole Terminelli.
Good evening, everybody. I'm legislator Nicole Terminelli. I represent District 14, which is the village of Messina, and I serve as the liaison to the EMC.
Thank you. Next up is Brian Washburn.
Good evening. I'm chair of the Watershed Management Committee. I am professor emeritus of chemistry and environmental science.
Thank you. Next up is Jana Lantry.
Good evening. I'm Jana Lantry, the DEC Region 6 Fisheries Manager. So I will try to give you answers to your questions, and we'll talk about fish tonight.
Thank you. Next up is Alexander Smith.
Yeah, hi, my name's Alex Smith. I'm on the town board of Madrid, but also work for Brookfield Power and have been part of 3 projects that were very focused on fisheries. Did the Eweir Nature Lake Fish Passage, the Hewelton Fish Passage, and also was involved with the tribe when we took the dam out at Hogansburg. So very interested in this topic.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next up is David Fisher.
Hi, I'm David Fisher, town councilman in Madrid. Just curious as to what the discussion is and learn more about it.
All right, thank you. Next up is Ryan. Ryan is connecting to audio. Aaron Berger, why don't you introduce yourself? I'll come back to Ryan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Berger. I'm on the Invasive Species Committee of the EMC, and I'm also a forester with the St. Lawrence County Soil and Water District.
Okay, thank you. Ryan Burkham, are you up? Can you introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm here. Ryan Burkham. What are we doing, John?
Just saying hello, who you are. You're on the EMC and 10 seconds about who you are.
Hello, I'm Ryan Burkham. I'm on the EMC on the Environment and Economy Committee. Outside of the EMC, I'm an arborist.
Thank you, Ryan. Evan Renwick, you're next up on my screen.
Yep, Evan Renwick, sitting in as a guest, former Conservation Committee Chairman of New York Trout Unlimited chapter. Yeah, just interested in tonight's conversation.
Thank you. Let's see, next we have Rod Tazi. Rod, if you could introduce yourself.
I'm here. This is Rod Tazi. I'm a member of the EMC, a member of the Environment and Economy Committee. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a federal firearms licensee. For those who don't know what an FFL is, I'm a gun dealer.
Okay, thank you, Rod. And Emily Sheridan. Would you like to introduce yourself, Emily? All right, she sometimes puts the things on mute and takes a minute to get back. Emily works for DEC. She works in the Great Lakes program, and she is very faithful in attending our meetings, and she has worked with the EMC on any number of projects over the years. And she's a very valuable asset to our group. On behalf of the EMC and Pat Whalen, the secretary, let me welcome you all to this meeting. Pat, we have grown to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 EMC members, one more, and we have a quorum. So since we don't have a quorum, let us not worry about well, accepting the order of business. Are there any items for old business or for new business? I have 2 items for new business. So I will, I'll just make a note of that. And might we say we accept the order of business by consensus?
So moved.
All right, thank you. We won't vote on that because we don't have a quorum. We won't approve the minutes of the January meeting unless we get another EMC member. So let's move right on to the hearings and comments from the public. Typically, we ask for comments from the public if they want to. I mean, if you're here to speak your 5-minute piece, we typically let you go before the scheduled speaker. If you are here to hear the speaker and then make comments, you are welcome to do so after the speaker is finished. Is there anybody who's here to make comments irrespective of the speaker? Okay. Hearing none, then let me introduce Jana Lantry, who is the Fisheries Manager for New York State DEC Region 6. We spoke earlier, and she's going to discuss fisheries as well as fish bypasses and other ways to manage or modify conditions for fish. And for those of you who got the meeting mailing, there was a link to I thought it was a very favorable profile in, was it Northern New York Business?
Yeah, it was an okay. The editing was interesting, but thank you for sending that link.
You're welcome. As we get ready for Jana to speak, I would ask us all to mute ourselves and try to hold your questions until Jana is done. EMC members have a tradition of asking a question in the middle of a presentation. And if you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. But if it can be written down and saved till the end of the presentation, that would be best. And then guests are invited to ask questions after EMC members have had an opportunity to ask the questions that they have. So without further ado, Jana Lantry.
Well, I just want to start by giving you folks a little bit more background on who I am. So I got my bachelor's from Cornell University. I then got my master's, my master's degree from SUNY ESF. And I've done fisheries research and management on Lake Ontario since 1995. So everything from lower trophic level up to being responsible for angler survey and everything in between. And started in 95, and as the Region 6 Fisheries Manager, I still have a role in Lake Ontario Fisheries Management. But of course, now that I'm Regional Fish Manager, which I took this promotion in May of 2018, I manage the oversee management of the fisheries in Jefferson, Lewis, Oneida, Herkimer, and St. Lawrence counties. So my perspective kind of comes from that Lake Ontario, where we think about invasive species quite a bit, and think of that when I think about, you know, what could potentially move inland when dams are removed. I think we all would agree that dam removal is a great thing within a system, particularly in inland waters, because we can increase habitat. It helps to improve fish populations, and I think oftentimes it's a win-win. But whenever dam removal or fish passage is considered, I just think it's important to consider some of the other factors that come into play. So I guess tonight, I guess my understanding, and please correct me where I'm wrong, my understanding is that there have been discussions amongst the group for the potential for fish passage at Madrid to perhaps create or enhance a fishery in the Canton area. And I'm a little unclear as to whether it's to benefit or provide a Chinook salmon fishery or an Atlantic salmon fishery, two different species, of course, one native and one not native. So maybe before I get started with more information, if somebody could provide some guidance on that.
I can give you a little background from the Environmental Management Council's perspective. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, we saw a newspaper article in which a Canton town councilman had made the comment statement that a fish passage in Madrid would benefit tourism by allowing fish to move upstream all the way to Pirates. And there was some discussion, you know, that we could have a fishery, a fishing season, a tourist fishing season, the way they do down in Pulaski. Shortly after that, there another newspaper article quoted Mr. Akers. And Kevin, I don't remember where it said that you were at, but you commented on the possibility of a fish passage. So the Environmental Management Council, their Environment and Economy Committee said, okay, if this is a possibility, let's take a look at it. And then, of course, COVID hit. And so very few people were able to do much of anything to pursue this topic. Now, as you know, we have been starting to, you know, get back to our work, we'd like some information about fish passages, some information about a possible fish passage in Madrid, and you know, is this something we'd ultimately, whether it happens tonight or sometime soon, ultimately like some direction? Is this something that the EMC should be pursuing, or is this something that we should leave alone and then get on with our lives?
Okay. Well, so there's factors to consider, and I guess I'll start with Chinook salmon, which is a non-native fish. I did read through that St. Lawrence University document that was in a link. I believe it was in the document that Brian Washburn had drafted. And much of that information is correct. There were some things that were not quite right, but when it comes to Chinook salmon, you know, in Lake Ontario fisheries management, the state and the province of Ontario started stocking Chinook really primarily to control the out of control population of non-native alewife. And if Chinook salmon are making it to Madrid, which I've heard they are, and I know one year when we were in the Grass River doing sampling below Madrid, we did catch a young of year Chinook salmon. So Chinook salmon in the Grass River, that would be a unintended consequence of the management actions taking place in Lake Ontario. And of course, everything's connected. So what could that potentially mean in the grand scheme of things? Well, with Chinook salmon, with it being a non-native fish, any Chinook running to Madrid now would probably be coming from Chinook that are in the St. Lawrence River, probably below Moses Saunders. I don't think it's likely that you're seeing Chinooks coming from Lake Ontario running down the St. Lawrence and, you know, getting past Moses Saunders and then running up the Grass River. So a consideration would be, would we want to allow Chinook salmon to pass and create a situation where their natural reproduction, where they've got more habitat for natural reproduction, and what are the potential implications in the St. Lawrence River in terms of predation and, you know, the St. Lawrence River above Moses Saunders is managed, fisheries management is done jointly between OM&R and DEC, where we work together when it comes to making management decisions. Below Moses Saunders, we would, like any fishery implications in terms of fisheries management and impacts to the fish population, really it's, you know, a shared resource with multiple jurisdictions. So that would be a factor to consider. So that's the non-native that we've talked about. I know folks have also talked about Atlantic salmon, which are native to the system. When I read through that document that St. Lawrence University drafted, some things I just want to clear up on that. So Atlantics are native to many of the tributaries to St. Lawrence River and of course Lake Ontario. And for many years, DEC has been stocking Atlantic salmon into Lake Ontario. There's a few other waters in the state that also get Atlantic salmon. But when we think of Lake Ontario, which I keep going back to that because it's all connected, right, with the St. Lawrence River and the Grass River, we were having very, very limited success with the stockings that were done for many years. And really the stocking numbers in that paper were older numbers. New York and USGS have been stocking roughly 120,000 Atlantic salmon into the Salmon River and Oak Orchard Creek, which are tribs to Lake Ontario. And there, meanwhile, over the last roughly 15 years or so, Ontario has been working on an Atlantic salmon restoration program, stocking Atlantics of various stages into 4 tributaries on the Ontario side, with relatively limited success. Now, Ontario is trying different strains. And on the New York side, we had been using really the same strain of Atlantic salmon for many years. And about the early 2010s, DEC started a transition to a different strain of Atlantic salmon that we thought would be more successful. And so the 2016 would have been the first year where we started stocking this other strain. It's called Sebago is the name of the strain, into Lake Ontario. And we are starting to see for a few years now, it actually started before 2016. We're still trying to figure out what happened there, but in Lake Ontario, we are starting to see increased angler catch rates of Atlantic salmon. And we anticipate that to hopefully improve now that we've got this other Sebago strain out there. And we also just recently this year started drafting, well, 2020 into 2021, started drafting an Atlantic salmon restoration, Atlantic salmon management program for Lake Ontario. So we are going to try to improve summertime fishery for Atlantics in the Salmon River and fall fisheries in some of the other tributaries to Lake Ontario. So from the DEC records for the Grass River, we don't have catches of Atlantic salmon. So I think while it was historically a native species to the Grass River, we haven't had those records here. And while we know a lot more about Atlantic salmon stocking success and restoration, I think there's several more unknowns and hurdles to jump over. So as far as if anybody were hoping to reestablish Atlantic salmon in the Grass River, I think that would be down the road a ways. I think there's a lot that would have to happen. So something to think about there. Now, in terms of how are we managing the Grass River, it's the Grass River below Madrid, really below Canton, is a cool and warm water fishery. I think you guys probably all know this. It's primarily, northern pike, walleye, bass is big, muskie. And those are the types of species that would, that do well in the Grass River. So when we think about fish passage, and also lake sturgeon are present in the Grass River and the St. Lawrence River. And when we think about fish passage, we need to think about, what are the benefits to our native species? Can we do things that benefit our native species that maybe don't also benefit the non-native species that we don't necessarily want in there? And, there's a few between tench and goby, viral hemorrhagic septicemia virus. There's some other invasives that when we talk about passing fish beyond that first impassable barrier to the St. Lawrence River, that just need to be part of the conversation and considered. And what are the potential impacts of passing an invasive species or expanding the range of an invasive species and potentially introducing it into additional habitat that it didn't previously have access to? Is it good or bad? It depends on the system. It depends on, what could happen. What would the ecosystem response be and the fish community response be? Now, if we only had native species to think about, it's a no-brainer, absolutely. Increasing the river mileage that sturgeon and muskie and walleye and bass have access to is a great thing. So I guess I just want to make folks aware that there are some absolute positives and there's also some negatives, and doing some kind of risk assessment, I think, would be important. And maybe you do jump through those hoops, do a risk assessment, and if it says, okay, risk is relatively low, so go ahead, then that's a good thing. In some systems, allowing more fish passage can be difficult, or have unintended negative consequences, I guess. And as far as fish passage, there's a variety of types of fish passage. So there are ways where some fish passages would allow certain types of fish to pass and others less so. If there is fish passage in a river that's got something like lake sturgeon and it's able to pass a lake sturgeon, it might also be able to pass something like tench or round goby. So just factors that need to be considered when moving forward. I'm checking to see if there was something that I missed. Yeah, I guess at this point, I have more that I can say, and absolutely am happy to keep talking. But just before I go further, does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask?
Yes, ma'am. This is Rod Tazi. When we talk about fish passes, we were talking in the EMC about two types, a bypass and a fish ladder. Now, I'm not a fisherman, so all I know or think I know is what I gleaned off the internet. What about a fish ladder? I mean, that's where that accommodates jumping fish, not bottom swimmers, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. So when you think about something that would, so in that situation, I guess an Atlantic salmon or Chinook salmon would probably be able to work through that type of fish ladder or passage. Something like a sturgeon, which is not a jumping fish, wouldn't. So then from a ecological standpoint, is benefiting native species the better way to go as opposed to benefiting non-native species? So from a DEC fisheries standpoint, we typically want to manage for our native species.
Pat Whalen had a question.
Hi, I got two questions. When was the last survey done near Madrid? One question. And two, what invasives like gobies or tench, whatever, were found in those surveys?
So we do, I don't have the years on it. So we have several surveys that were done in the Grass River. We have several done between Madrid and Canton. I want to say probably, maybe as many as up to 10 between Madrid and Canton, and then several more below Madrid to the mouth of, to where the grass enters the St. Lawrence River. Unfortunately, I don't have the years. I can get that specific information to you. As far as have we captured a round goby, I'm scanning the list now. I don't believe we had, but I am double checking.
So Jenna, this is Pat. I don't
Yeah.
need to know exactly what date, but what century or decade? I mean, is it fairly recently or, history? Yeah,
Most of our surveys in the last, almost every year, I was pretty surprised, actually, we've been in the grass so much, primarily because there is eastern sand darter, which is a threatened fish species. So
that's
several
good for me.
times. Yeah, and we did capture goby. We've not yet captured tench. Tench is actually it's currently expanding its range. Their tench is quite abundant below Moses Saunders, in Lake Champlain, in the St. Lawrence River. And there is a working group, which I am part of, where we are in the process of finding out, okay, what surveys are out there that might detect tench and their movement, and what's the best way to go about sampling them. It's something to that we need to keep track of, and that's a species where the impacts to fish communities are not fully understood yet. So I would expect eventually tench will probably get into the Grass River. It's just like many invasive species, they start spreading, and when conditions allow for it, they depending on the species, can perform better in an environment than a native species can.
Are there other questions from EMC members?
I've got one, John. This is
Okay,
Brian
Brian.
Washburn. In the document that I put forth, one of the questions I asked is the quantification of the number of salmon that were basically in the Grass River. We know that people flock to the Salmon River in Pulaski because there are a lot of fish to be caught. And with what these people have been saying about sightings of salmon or catching a salmon below, exactly how many are we talking about? Is there going to be enough of even the Chinook? I would assume they're Chinook, based on what you said, coming into the up towards Madrid. Is there going to be enough to take and have an enhanced economic activity?
So that's a good question, and I wish I had more answers than I do. As far as how many Chinook are there, the sampling that we've done, we've caught one. I'm sure there's more, and I have heard reports of anglers catching Chinook salmon. To what extent, I don't have a handle on that at all. Like, I guess the folks that live in Madrid would see if Chinooks are showing up in any significant number, there you would see probably some jumping below the dam. I would think that once word got out, hey, you can catch a Chinook there, you would start to see anglers below the dam where the salmon are gonna kind of stack up. And so you guys in the Madrid area would be the best to give me an idea, which if you know, it would be great to know, what is the extent of the fishery now. As far as if, say, the decision was to go ahead and allow for passage of Chinook salmon, could that create a fishery? Well, it depends on several factors. Our Chinook, so Chinook year class is variable. We see that in Lake Ontario. That's one thing that we pay really close attention to. It's extremely variable in the Salmon River, which is the tributary to Lake Ontario, where we have the most amount of habitat for Chinook salmon to produce. About 50% of the Chinook salmon production in Lake Ontario is probably coming from the Salmon River. They do reproduce in other tributaries. So could there be successful Chinook salmon reproduction in the Grass River? Probably some, since we did catch a young of year, but the fact that it is a cold water species, and this portion of the river is more of a cool water, warm water type situation. Water temperatures are such that it's better at supporting those warm and cool water fishes. So there's that can impact year class strength. Even if there was, say, quality habitat and the right temperatures, does that mean that it's going to create a reliable annual fishery? Not necessarily. It may not. And I admittedly may be a little biased towards Lake Ontario because I spent over 25 years working on it, but and I've worked for over 20 years very closely with the anglers and charter boat operators, the guides in the rivers for Lake Ontario, like regularly still. We have meetings with folks that fish, we have a Lake Ontario focus group with those folks. Just knowing the fishery for Chinooks that's in the Salmon River and some of the other major tributaries all around Lake Ontario. If there were a Chinook fishery created in Canton, would that draw folks from far away? I don't know, because they're going to weigh, do we want to go to the Grass River versus a trip to Lake Ontario? Or some might say, well, if I have the opportunity to go after a Chinook salmon and then turn around and go after a muskie, some folks may want to do that. As far as what the end result would be in terms of economic impact, it's hard to say. And again, I don't know if it would be, I think there's enough reasons to think that you wouldn't be able to hang your hat on it every year, I guess, to be honest.
Thank you. I'd like to open this up to the entire audience, but as we do, I'd like to ask Tony Cooper to give us just a little bit of a history of the discussions that have gone on about fish ladders and the dam and et cetera, because I think that's an essential part of the context that we at the EMC have not had.
Yeah, sure, John. A number of years ago, we had an individual who came in from NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A gentleman came in and he did a presentation on same topic, fish ladders versus removal of dam. He went down the same lines as you did. His thought was it was good to take all dams out. I believe that was his idea. But as far as economics went, it wasn't going to improve the economic situation, at least for the community of Madrid. So we looked at the cost and we decided to go, so we said stop video, there you go. We looked at the cost, that it might be better for us to keep our dam because we have a very, there's a very strong attachment by, I'd say the majority of the members of the municipality. They've grown up with that dam. It's been a part of their lives. And at least at that time, there was no interest in removing the dam. And I believe the gentleman talked about the cost of putting a bypass or a fish ladder in really wasn't feasible from the economic perspective. So we teamed up with the IDA and St. Lawrence County spent, I can't give you a specific number. I think it was in excess of $100,000 to repair the bulkheads on the dam. And that was, David, I think that was about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, I believe, that we had the bulkheads completely redone. And that's a pretty good cost to the county to try to keep the dam. So that's kind of where we're at. I had seen the report, and I appreciate the folks in other places, and Canton, I appreciate Canton. But at the same time, this is the first time we've really been included in this kind of discussion outside of the town of Madrid. So I guess it depends what great things this would do for the town of Madrid. That's kind of what myself and the councilman for Madrid have to consider. So good enough, John?
Yeah, adding my 2 cents. I think the dam right now provides a head, and therefore it provides a pool behind it. And you guys have a pretty active canoeing, both recreational and competitive canoeing programs that presumably benefit from that pool behind the dam.
Yes.
So, okay. Let me open it up. Kevin Akers had indicated that he wanted to, Lance, let me get Kevin first since we've opened it up to everybody, and I'll come back to you. Kevin?
Oh, thank you, John. So I'm just, the comments that I made in the paper were a response to the town councilman back, I know it must be 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm wondering about the species that are in there now. We know that people from Pennsylvania come up and they fish for muskie, and they're getting some big muskie in Chase Mills in that Chamberlain's Corners area. So is the dam itself restricting the muskie from furthering going up? Are there any muskie beyond the Madrid Dam up towards Pirates? And that's probably something that Miss Lantry could answer. And I'm a land lover, so I never have always on the farm, so I never had a chance really to fish. So I don't know. I have heard of people catching salmon at the dam. Alex Smith, he's a fisherman, or his son is, he may be able to answer that. But my question is, are there any muskie beyond the dam in Madrid up to Pirates?
Yeah,
I could answer that question. There's a fellow here in Canton that catches about 30 muskies, between 30 and 50 muskies a year in the Little River. If you know where the Little River is, just beyond St. Lawrence, where, excuse me, where the Little River flows into the grass, is probably known as one of the best muskie places in St. Lawrence County. And if you watch the fishing show with Dan Meisner, right by the island there, by the Minor Street Bridge, they were taping a program one time, and he was not catching a lot of fish for going down the Grass River to that point. I had my canoe on the side of the river there. He cast towards my canoe and caught about a 30-pound muskie, which the show ended with. So that whole section, also down by the county home, which the county used to own, that bend in there is well known for muskies. So and even the dam at below Madrid is well known for muskies. So that whole area is well known, and you can go up pretty far up the river as far as muskies go. I hope that answers your question. I want to add a couple things, but.
So do the muskie, for Miss Lantry, do the muskie make it over the dam during the high water in the spring? Because sometimes it gets within a foot or two, sometimes very close to the top in the spring runoff. Are the muskies migrating?
I think the muskies are local. And so when they put the dam in, they trap the population, but then, they move somewhat and whatever. While trout are migratory, they're moving and things, but that the muskies, the bass, the walleye, they tend to be local. They breed the same place they live.
Thanks, Lance. Jana, do you have something you'd like to add?
I want to add.
Oh, go ahead, Lance.
Oh, I want to add a couple things. I do a lot of fishing, and I really want to thank you for your work on the Lake Ontario, because I caught a lot of salmon in Lake Ontario, and a lot, not so many Atlantic salmon, but a lot of Chinook and some nice fish. So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, the surveys that we've done upstream of the dam in Madrid, there are muskies caught. As far as are they coming up, I think a lot of them are local. I haven't actually seen the dam in Madrid. I really can't speak to whether or not they're going above the dam, but as far as going back down, I think they would have a problem, regardless of whether they're crossing that dam or not. There are muskie. I think Lance gave a far better description than I would be able to do about the muskie there. There's also walleye and bass. The one native species that we're not seeing, have not yet seen above Madrid, would be lake sturgeon. Lake sturgeon are doing very well in certain areas though. So one thing that could be done if the decision ended up being no fish passage would be to really promote that great muskie fishery. If there is fish passage allowed, the fishing regulations would change from Madrid to Pirates, where it would be, or the first impassable barrier, which I believe would be Pirates. The fishing regulations would be the Great Lakes regs, which are more restrictive. So muskie harvest, the minimum length would become 54 inches as opposed to, I believe it might be 40 now. Northern pike, it would be, I believe it's 3 at 22 inches. Just so for bass, smallmouth bass would be the same regulation as what you have now in that stretch. But that's another factor to consider if things are opened up for those other species, if it's no longer the first impassable barrier. But there is a pretty amazing, I've heard great things about the fishery above Madrid. So what would the potential impacts be if it's opened up to whether it's Chinook salmon or just the potential for other invasive species? What would the impacts be to what is there now? It's hard to say at this point. And Mr. Cooper mentioned that NOAA gave a presentation indicating that it's great to take out all dams. It is absolutely a great thing to remove dams in numerous situations, many situations, and improving fish passage through better culvert replacement. I completely agree. But when we're talking about breaching that first impassable barrier to the Great Lakes, where we have numerous invasive species and there's a threat, a continued threat for more to come into the system, it's just something that some folks who focus more on inland waters or a smaller area, they might not think about. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Thank you, Jana. I think Alexander Smith had a comment a couple of minutes ago.
Oh, well, my thought is this. To cut to the chase, I think if you breach the dam, there's never any going back.
Yeah.
So I think a fish passage, if there's a lot of interest, I think that would be an avenue to take. I think the resources that it would take to put a fish passage in, if it was done correctly, would be far less than breaching the dam. And then if let's say we didn't talk about Asian carp, or we didn't talk about if you're threatening mussels or whatever, you can always just block it off and say thank you with a set of stop logs and just stop the flow. So I was concerned that this conversation was going to take a hard direction one way or the other, either or dam breach or not. But I mean, it doesn't seem like there's too much energy either way. But I would support a fishway, but just because of the ability to go backwards if it wasn't successful, if it was serving negative aspects.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions or comments from other people?
Question for Herb.
Go ahead, Herb.
I'd just like to ask some members of the EMC or from Jana that if they were to take the dam out, there's quite a large body of water that's behind the dam that is of huge recreational and land value. So, in my research, I believe there's about 60 feet of elevation between Canton and Madrid. So what might be affected, which somebody might not know, is the state lands where the DEC boat launches just past Canton, and also Canton College, and I think the municipal, and Kevin, you can probably speak better, the municipal park in Madrid is on that body of water. So, and I think there's several summer camps along that section of the river. So breaching the dam might lower the temperature of the water and may help some, but I think it would be a huge factor with land values along the river, and I didn't know how far that would be affected if the elevation of the dam and how far it would come back. If anybody had that answer of the water levels.
I think I can answer it, I guess. I'm not the fisherman, my kid is, but that dam is really only holding back 10 to 12 feet of water. And I don't think you're going to have the effect. It gets pretty shallow just downstream Bucks Bridge. So you're talking approximately, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile. And then there'd be no effect to the water upstream. So the impoundment is less than 3/4 of a mile.
Lance has a comment. Unmute, please, Lance. You have to unmute. All right. Lance, Don O'Shea had indicated he had a comment.
Okay. Let me just, sing this up. Herb, I don't know if you remember this or not, but we have photos. There was a dam in Canton, and there was a fish ladder on the Potsdam side in Canton to allow the migratory salmon and things to come up that ladder. The dam stayed, the ladder was taken out because the quality of the water deteriorated. But as far as once you do it, it's done. If you put a fish ladder in like the one that was already in Canton in around 1900 when Rushton had his business going, then you don't have to take the dam down. You just have a fish ladder, and the migratory fish did go up in Canton. So that's one idea. The other thing is there are two types of trout that we've been talking about. There's kind of the Chinook type salmon and the Atlantic salmon. Now, if you're in Canton and you have Chinook salmon, when they breed, they die. So if you have 1,000 Chinook come up the Grass River to Canton and they lay eggs, 1,000 of them die. They don't just disappear. They die on the side in the river and wash up on the shore. Now the Atlantic salmon will lay their eggs and then go back. They're the native species. So I think that's something to really look at. Do you want a fish that dies in the river, or do you want a fish or a salmon that's going to go back and breed again and again and again? As far as muskies going back, one more thing. The salmon, they have a breeding program in Black Lake at Eelwire State Park until, I think that's still going, isn't it, John? We had a presentation on it.
I'm not sure if there's a breeding program going on now or not.
Well, anyway, you have a photo that or a video that you showed us at one EMC meeting. We're talking about the are there any sturgeon left in the St. Lawrence River? And somebody had a DEC camera at the dam of the sturgeon, and there was like thick. You remember this, John? They had pictures of the sturgeon. And there was like hundreds and hundreds of sturgeon. And what was that, about 5 years ago?
No, it would have been longer. My recollection is that Danny Parker would have had that video, and it's been at least 10 years since he was on the EMC.
But I mean, they thought there were none, and there were like literally hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring up those points. And the other question I have is, I thought that there was a ladder in Ogdensburg at the old power plant.
No.
No? Okay.
Brian Washburn, you had some comments?
Well, first of all, with what Lance just said, it is highly likely that if salmon would go up the Grass River, they would not be stopping at Canton to breed. They would be most likely going up to the tributary streams, including the Little River and beyond. The second thing is, if the dam is basically opened up, I think Jana spoke to this a little bit, there would be a huge expansion of stream mileage if indeed that did occur. The Little River goes into the Grannis, it goes into the Leonard. They all are all basically approaching the area where you start to get the transition from cool, warm to cold. And the other thing about the Pirates Dam, the Pirates Dam is a run of the river dam. That means that the dam is not completely closing off the river. The Grass River actually flows alongside of the two penstocks for the two power stations at Pirates, and it actually flows through a breach at the Pirates Dam on the southeastern side. So really, from a theoretical perspective, a fish could probably take and make its way, depending upon what the structure is on the southeast side of the Pirates Dam, it could enter the cool water or cold water fishery that DEC designates from up above the Pirates Dam. Now, that stuff all has to be investigated before you take and start to do this. Jenna, is DEC pursuing any stocking of Atlantic salmon other than what is going on at the in the St. Regis River in conjunction with the Akwesasne?
Right now, no. We have other locations in the state where we stock fish, and I know USGS. I issue the stocking permit for the stocking that happens into Hopkinton Brook, and I've worked closely with that Tunison USGS lab for many years. But yeah, so a couple things. So if we're just talking fish ladder now, the question I have for you folks is, what is the fish that would be the one or more? What fish would you want to pass? If it is Chinook salmon and non-native, it sounds, you guys are more familiar with this system than I am. I'm still learning my geography for some of the inland waters. But it sounds like from what you folks are saying, it would allow passage once you get above Madrid. I know it would go, fish would be able to go into Little River. It sounded like potentially past Pirates, which I was thinking would be impassable. But regardless, opening up river mileage that would promote Chinook salmon reproduction into a system. So the Chinook would be born there, but then they would run out, spring fingerlings, out into the St. Lawrence River below Moses Saunders. International waters. This is a broader discussion that would have to be had from that standpoint. DEC never intended to create a Chinook fishery in the St. Lawrence River. There's several factors that would need to be taken into account in terms of predation impacts. We're dealing with that now in Lake Ontario. And over time, what's the potential for more Chinook salmon reproduction? So that's something that would need to be considered in a risk analysis. As far as Atlantic salmon, what is in Lake Ontario now is because of stocking. And initially it was poor survival of what we stocked for several reasons. And it's just in these more recent years where we've been working in this new strain, the Sebago strain. We did start stocking a few before 2016, but shifted entirely by 2016, where we're starting to see higher catch rates after all these decades of stocking Atlantic salmon. We just in the last, maybe 6-7 years ago or so, started seeing a couple of wild Atlantic salmon produced in the Salmon River, and also a Atlantic salmon brown trout hybrid. So, right now in the Grass River, Atlantic salmon, is my understanding, are not here yet. And it would be a best case scenario years down the road before, if you were to try to start something with Atlantic, it would be, I would anticipate, several years before you might see something happen. So that's kind of questionable at this point. So then it's like, would it be better to wait until you have more information to know what might actually work? But then again, if Atlantics are passing, Chinook are passing, and that brings us to a bigger discussion that would have to be had with Ontario and possibly Quebec.
Ask a couple questions. One, it's my assumption that
Brian, I'd like to give Don O'Shea a chance to talk, and then Kevin Akers, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Don, did you have a comment? Your box lit up a couple of times. All right.
Yeah, I was trying to contact you.
Okay. All right. Well,
I don't have a question.
Okay,
the information I have on, I know there was years ago there were plenty of sturgeon in the St. Lawrence, and they come up as far as the dam in the Oswegatchie. And I knew one guy that they called Doc, and he wasn't a doctor, but he fished sturgeon all of his life, and they been into surgeon. And so that's how many there were in there. He and his brother were great sturgeon fishermen. And I myself caught one in the Oswegatchie below the dam. And I know people have caught salmon in there. I never saw them, but they told me about it.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Kevin Akers, you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you, John. I think the points for the EMC to consider is Madrid likes their dam. It's both aesthetic and actually recreational. And like what Mr. Bullock had said, there's camps along there, there's canoeing, at least there's a body of water there for skating. And there may be a possibility in the future of a revitalization of a beach right off the park there. So I guess, I don't know where the topic of the salmon, whether that was generated by people from Madrid or where that came into. I think the question for the EMC and for the DEC, would there be value of actually adding a fish ladder for the native species without having to try and introduce Chinook or Atlantic salmon? Would there be some value of that? And then what Jana had mentioned, Ms. Lantry had mentioned was about the changing of that body of water would be subject to the lake regulations, which that may not appeal to the local fishermen for the length of the fish. So that would be the thing. Madrid, I'm certain, I don't speak for everyone, but I'm certain that they want to keep their dam. I think they may be amenable to a fish ladder if there was some benefit for the native species and to enhance actually the fishing there in Madrid, or the traveling of the migration of the fish up to Pirates, the more the natural flow. So I think in my mind, that would be the things, that there would not be any consideration of removal of the dam.
Okay, Brian, you had another question?
One question for Jana. I'm under the impression that Atlantic salmon generally will only return maybe at the most, maybe 2 years, rather than year after year after year. I have a question that doesn't involve the Madrid Dam. Another dam has been brought up in discussion, Jana, and that is the Ampersand Dam, as Don O'Shea was just mentioning, on Mill Street in Ogdensburg. That dam is up for FERC relicensing within a very, very short period of time. What is going to be your input into the relicensing of that particular dam?
Okay, I tried to write down questions. If I forget one, please let me know. I forgot to answer one of the questions. So first, I guess to get to what Kevin was mentioning, is there value in allowing for some native fish passage? So I guess the species that you would be considering would probably be lake sturgeon, muskie, northern pike, bass, walleye. If after research is done, or some kind of analysis is done, if it's determined that it's possible to pass those fish, I keep thinking about lake sturgeon in particular, because that would be the one that would be more challenging to pass. And if you can pass a sturgeon, there's the risk of passing other invasive fish species like tench and goby. So there would have to be some kind of analysis done. Would that be valuable? In many ways, it would absolutely be valuable. Another part of the assessment that would need to be done is the potential risk of passing invasive fish diseases, that's something you wouldn't see until there was a problem. My gut feel is it could be a low risk, but that's something that would need to be looked at. We have viral hemorrhagic septicemia virus in Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, and that has caused fish die-offs, including actually a muskie die-off in the St. Lawrence River back several years ago. And we're still trying to recover from the damage that did. So as long as those other factors are considered.
Just a quick comment on that. I mean, I was part of doing the Eelware Fishway and the Hewelton Fishway, which there's over $9 million worth of resources that were put into that Oswegatchie River. So, I mean, I'm really glad that this was brought up. I was more focused on Madrid Dam, but I mean, that Ampersand Dam, in my opinion, something needs to be done there to make the system work, being the Oswegatchie River.
So to get to that, and then briefly, then how many years would an Atlantic salmon return? It depends on the system. So what I can say for Lake Ontario, we tend to see the most of the Atlantic salmon that we've caught by anglers in Lake Ontario were ages 2 and 3. So that would suggest that, at least for that system, the may not live much past maybe age 4 or 5. We did have some 4s and 5s. Would that be different in the Grass River? Possibly, but just to give you an idea of what data we have. As far as Ogdensburg goes, so I have spent a lot of time thinking about Ogdensburg because it is up for relicensing soon. My understanding is from an economic standpoint, there may be concerns from the status of the dam. Sounds like there may be repairs needed. And when you go into relicensing, thinking about the situation there at Ogdensburg, we have to think about the big picture and what might happen down the road. How might things unfold? There's a lot that I don't know about that system or that dam at the moment. But what I have started the process of is, so since I worked on Lake Ontario, I've worked on the St. Lawrence River for many years. I know the risk of invasive spread and the impacts are huge, and it can't be ignored. Not anything to run away from, but we need to think about it. So, and also sea lamprey, opening up sea lamprey habitat. There's millions and millions of dollars spent on sea lamprey control. So I've reached out to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. They oversee the collaboration, coordination of fisheries management and research throughout the Great Lakes. And the St. Lawrence River falls within the scope of their joint strategic plan. And so the Great Lakes Fish Commission helps to coordinate efforts of state and provincial and federal agencies on both sides of the border, plus academic institutions. And they also oversee sea lamprey control. So I reached out to them asking what tools are available to do a risk assessment for the potential, to look at the potential spread of invasive or impacts of invasive species if Ogdensburg is removed or there's fish passage put in. Certainly during any relicensing, we consider fish passage, as Alex is well aware. And so Great Lakes Fish Commission has already started the process of doing a risk assessment specifically on sea lamprey. And we're in the process of working with the Fish and Wildlife Service to do a risk assessment looking specifically at any benefits or risks associated with invasive species moving up past Ogdensburg. So it's a tool that once it's developed, it will be applied elsewhere. I mean, we've got the Credit River. There's so many large tributaries to the St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario that are all kind of reaching the end of their anticipated lifespan or reaching the point where relicensing is coming up. So
I need to call a halt to this discussion because the EMC has some other business that they need to take care of. And we have established a limit of 2 hours, so 8 o'clock for our meetings. So Jana, thank you very much for coming and talking to us. And all of those of you who came as guests to hear Jana's presentation, you are welcome to stay for the rest of the EMC meeting. You are also welcome if you want to disengage at this point, by all means, go ahead. And again, Jana, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jenna.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
John, before she leaves, could I ask just one quick question?
Sure.
She asked us a question of which species we might be interested, but I would like to reflect the question back to her of which species could the state be most supportive of? I mean, we would be looking for recommendations if it's Atlantic salmon or Chinook or I mean, we look for state support and grants. We look for state support in stockings. And without state support, I don't think the county could do much of anything. So we would look to you for advice.
Yeah, and it would be native species with an analysis that demonstrates that, you know, invasives wouldn't end up passing. So yeah, native muskie, walleye, northern pike, bass.
Okay.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you all to all the guests. David Fisher, you didn't say a word. I'm sorry. I hope you weren't trying to get a word in edgewise, because if you did, I missed it. But thank you for coming. We have a quorum for the EMC. So as long as we do have a quorum for the EMC, I'd like us to go and review the January EMC meeting minutes and possibly approve them. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the January meeting?
Definitely.
Definitely. Who said that?
That was Kevin Akers, but I think he was leaving.
Yeah. All right.
I'll move it.
All right. Brian moved it. Is there a second?
Pat will second. Okay.
Lance seconded. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the minutes of the January meeting? The only comment I have is I am so very, very happy that Dakota Casserly is doing minutes these days.
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Moving on, we have a report by the representative of the Board of Legislators. Good evening, Ms. Terminelli.
Good evening, everybody. I don't really have much to report. A few of us attended the Grass River Blueway Marketing Plan Public Workshop. I think that was since our last meeting. And there was some very, very interesting information that was shared. I think going forward with that marketing plan, they're really considering how to best balance both environmental impact, but also economic growth. And they're kind of taking a lot into consideration with that. So they'll be putting more publication out on that once they've collected all the results of the survey. Like most surveys that are put out, I was disheartened to see the lack of participation when a survey goes out to the public like that. I believe, I mean, there were like 200, I think, possibly people that responded to the survey, and it was sent out to everybody in St. Lawrence County, is my understanding. So that's a little disheartening. Solar projects, we continue to get updates about those, and it continues to be definitely considering the agriculture, the land, and where solar projects, especially large ones, are being considered, is problematic to many people. I also wanted to note that we have the highway department is going to be putting out RFPs for 3 different outbuildings that they're planning to put in, and I requested that they look into solar panels on the roofs for those, just to be a little bit more environmentally friendly, being that these buildings, these outpost buildings, would be both floor heated and ceiling heated. So I asked them to look into that to see if there'd be an environmental and cost savings to go along with that. And then Joe Brandt was put forward at the full board meeting for reappointment. So those were the only things that I really think I have to report out on.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Speaking of the selection process, pardon me. The candidates have been vetted by a committee of the Board of Legislators, and a recommendation, has it been made to the board, or will it still be made to the board?
It will still be made to the board, so that goes through the full board meeting. I have spoken with Herb and with
Yeah.
Give me a second.
Bowman?
Yes, Dustin. Thank you,
Yes.
Bowman. I have spoken with the two of them in regards to my the interview committee's recommendation that we move their names forward. So they will be moved forward at the full board meeting. And then it's my understanding that there'll be some other openings coming up as well, so that we may be able to fill those. We've got some candidates ready to go for that as well. So that's great news. And you should be proud of yourselves as an EMC, because this is the only committee that we typically have to go through the interview process on. The other committees can't get a full board, and you guys have people just jumping to get on. So I think that definitely says a lot about the work of this committee and the reputation that you have. So thank you. For sure.
Nicole mentioned 2 additional vacancies. We had 2 members of the EMC whose terms end at the end of February. And one of them is William David Barnes. And he indicated that he does not want to continue. And the other is Aaron Berger. And of course, Aaron is here tonight. But Aaron is just busy as all get out. And so he has asked for the, to step aside from the EMC. And so we will have 2 openings. And at some point, Aaron, before tonight's meeting is over, we'll do 3 cheers for you and for the work that you've done for the EMC. But right now, I'd like to move on to reports of the committees. Pat, you had a question or a comment. Your hand is raised.
Yeah, how many vacancies do we have? And we got 2 potentials?
We are filling 2 and we have 2 more, yes.
Okay, good, thanks.
But we had 5 or 6 people apply as part of the last outreach that we did for possible members. So we have a pool to pick from.
And the 2 vacancies that are upcoming is one Aaron?
One is Aaron and the other is David Barnes.
Okay.
Both of their terms end at the end of this month.
Yep, got it. Thanks.
What about Jen Burbidge?
Jen Burbidge, her term ended at the end of 2020, and she chose to not continue. She's opened up her own independent small business, and that's taking her time. Jen was on the EMC.
And who were the others, Scott?
Well, the other vacancy was left from Erica Leonard. Erica was the general manager of the St. Lawrence Center Mall. And she came for about 4 months, 5 months, and then decided that A, this was not necessarily what she was primarily interested in, and B, managing the mall is a huge task. So
yeah, what's left of it?
Well, yeah, trying to keep the doors open is, I imagine, a huge task. Let's move on to reports of the committees. There is no executive committee report, and there is no Conservation of Resources Committee. For the Conservation of Resources Committee, Pat and I got on the phone last Wednesday, and we hung around and talked for about 10 minutes informally. And then I am told that as soon as we rang off, Sue Rao rang in.
Yes.
And so we missed connections, and there was not a committee meeting. I'm sorry, Sue, that we missed that.
It's okay. I had it in my mind. It was somehow 4:45 turned into 5 o'clock. I don't know.
That's all right. The Environment and the Economy Committee, is there a report from that committee? Ryan, do you have a report?
So we met, there was a few extras at our meeting besides the regular members. I guess the take-home message from our meeting is we discussed the same topics we've been discussing for the last few months. So I don't know that we need to go into that. Hopefully tonight's presentation will give us some new things to talk about, and we'll come to you with some new thoughts next month. So I guess that's my summary.
At the Environment and Economy Committee meeting, Brian Washburn also attended, and the information that Brian had put together that we distributed for this meeting, we had also distributed it at the E+E committee meeting. Excuse me. And so they were able to discuss that. And Brian, I'd like to thank you for attending that other meeting. For that reason, there was not a Watershed Management Committee meeting this month. And the Invasive Species Committee, in lieu of a regular Invasive Species Committee meeting, members attended a webinar that was put on by Cornell Cooperative Extension about the spotted lanternfly. Now, the spotted lanternfly is an invasive insect that the our invasive species committee has decided that they would like to focus on among several other species this year. So the ability to attend that webinar from Cornell Cooperative Extension was very valuable. Don, do you have anything you'd like to report on that webinar?
No, we also got into the tree of heaven because that was part and parcel of the problem with spotted lanternfly, and also it's an invasive in its own right.
So I know Don was able to attend. I saw Aaron Berger on that webinar. I saw Sue Rao on that webinar. Pat Whalen, were you there too? Okay. All right, so those are all the committee meetings. Report of staff. I'd just like to, you know, we're doing what we always do and we're very busy, yada, yada. But we have a notice of funding availability for community development block grant. And that does not necessarily affect the EMC, except that it takes up a ton of my time. And the due date is April the 9th. So that's you know, just a little less than 2 months. And so that's they dropped the flag. So, you know, we're into it. Dakota, is there anything you'd like to report for for your work with the planning office?
Sure. At the moment, I've been helping out in addition to EMC work. We continue to do a fair amount of the COVID mapping for the county. I partner on that with Matilda Larson in the planning office, and also helping the town and village of Hammond rewrite their land use regulations, and then assisting the town of Rossi with updating their land use regulations as well. We have a meeting next week with the town and village of Hammond to discuss the draft we have been working on with them, and I would say it's progressing quite well.
Dakota, are you able to incorporate any of the shoreline conservation recommendations that were put together a couple of years ago?
I have it in my notes to discuss with them at next week's meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you. Pat Whalen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I got a quick question for Dakota. I see you're working on 3 town zoning or land use regs. Is this a new hot topic? Why is it 3 towns all at once? And does my town need to start thinking about doing this?
That's a good question. It all depends, as I'm sure most of you know, that New York State is a home rule state. So municipalities, say in St. Lawrence County, towns and villages have primarily their own land use regulations, and they differ in many ways. For the town of Rossi and the town of Hammond and the village of Hammond, there is no zone. So all that exists is site plan review and subdivision regulations. And not so much Rossi, but Hammond has a lot of, not a lot of development, but there's a lot of focus with shoreline property owners. And there's some discussion about some more regulation to protect the residential residential character of the town. As some of you may remember, there was in the past a push to place a slaughterhouse in the town, and the town has no rules regulating where such an operation will go. And as most of you may know as well, the wind development was quite controversial, and they do have a wind law there. But what it boils down to in terms of updating their existing land use regs is to give some more strength to protecting the residential character of the town, while having some idea where, say, commercial operations can and should go within the town. And the town of Rossi, a similar situation, just site plan review and subdivision regulations. They definitely don't want to go full zoning by any means, but they were in a position where they don't have a board of appeals in terms of people wanting to potentially contest any sort of development. So we helped them draft or incorporate some sort of board of appeals into their current land use regulations. And Pat, I think you're in the town of Louisville, town of Messina.
Louisville.
Louisville.
Yeah, I'm in Louisville, and we're right
Mm.
on the river. And I was just wondering if maybe there's some, shoreline resiliency specs that they should be incorporating.
Louisville has been relatively active, at least during the 20 years I've been in the planning office, in doing some rezoning. I know I worked with the town of Louisville, 10 years ago or so to update their zoning code. And they have, Louisville is respectful of their resources. They have some shoreline. Well, I mean, most of the St. Lawrence River shoreline is owned by NYPA. Wilson Hill there is a resort zoning that Wilson Hill falls under, but Louisville and Madrid as well have a very interesting conservation a conservation district that extends 250 feet out from the banks of the Grass River. So as the Grass River meanders through both of those communities for a distance of 250 feet from its bank, development is limited. You can't build your house and put a septic system right there. You can have a boathouse maybe, or some kind of a summer structure or something temporary, but your house has to be set back. Your septic system has to be set back. And I think that contributes to the bucolic character of the Grass River through both of those communities. It's stunningly wise in terms of conservation. And if I could only get every community that's got a riverfront to do something like that, I would die a happy man. Every chance I get, I talk to people about Louisville and Madrid and what they did. They did that in 1973, and it's been on their books since 1973. And every chance I get, I tell other communities, you need to do the same thing. And they look at me like I've got horns.
Well, that's good to hear. And I'm proud to say my dad was on the town board in 1973. So it's a good thing. I should have known that. But yeah, you're right. That piece of the river is really nice. I've fished a lot on there and boated and canoed, and that is a nice stretch of water.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
The resiliency plan did not go as far as beyond Ogdensburg.
I think I knew that, but it still wouldn't be bad to steal those specs.
Yeah, we'd like to incorporate them in as many communities as possible.
Right.
All right. So that's the report of the staff. Is there any unfinished business before the EMC? All right, I've got a couple of items for new business. The first is that you probably received from Lisa Bartolo in my office, and you might have cussed her out, although you were polite enough not to respond, about an annual financial disclosure statement that all members of the EMC are required to fill out and send in. This is new this year for the EMC. In the past, the financial disclosure process has been there as long as the county has had its ethics law, and that's over 5 years. I don't know quite how far back, but it says in the ethics law that let's see, officers and employees, including members of boards, commissions, and public authorities of the government who hold policy-making positions. And we were able to argue for years that the EMC doesn't set policy. So therefore, there's no reason for EMC members to have to worry about this. And the county bought it. I'm told that in this past year, the I don't know who it was from the state, came in and did an audit of the ethics policy. And the representatives of the state dinged the county for, among other things, not making all of the members of all of its advisory committees fill out financial disclosure statements. So it is at the requirement of the state that we sent these out to you. Now, I've already heard back from at least one member of the EMC and probably a couple others thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to tell the county my business. And that's a personal decision that you need to make. If you feel that you cannot or do not want to or will not fill out the form, folks, at some point, the Board of Legislators might need to move to deal with that issue. They haven't yet, and I'm not aware that there's any process yet to do that. But at some point, that could happen. If at some point you might decide that, well, they want to do this, and in good faith, I can't do it, and so in good faith, I can't stay on the EMC. I would hope that you don't make that decision, but if you do, I would absolutely respect it.
John, I don't remember getting that. So could you have it sent out to me again, please?
Yes, I will make sure that you get that. It went out yesterday from Lisa Bartle.
Okay, I haven't seen it either, John.
Yeah.
All right, I'll double check.
I'll look.
I'll
Yeah.
double check. All right. But anyways, that's what that is. Are there any questions or comments about the financial disclosure?
Yeah, John, this is Rod Tozzi.
Hi, Rod.
I spent way too many years working for the federal government, having to fill out financial disclosures.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what they're used for. I understand exactly what the process is. That said, I am not a paid member of this council. I see no reason why I should divulge to anybody who I owe money to or who owes money to me. So the bottom line of this is, John, I'm not going to submit a financial disclosure. That's the bottom line. If that means I'm off the EMC, it's been real. It's been sometimes pleasurable. Have a great day. This will be the last time that I talk to the members of the EMC.
Rod, you are not off the EMC for having that opinion. At some point, if the Board of Legislators decides that they want to enforce the rule, then the Board of Legislators will inform you of that. But whether you, at this point, whether you stay or leave is entirely up to you. And you don't need to make an announcement or decision tonight.
So I haven't got this either. What information are they looking for?
It's rather invasive. I filled one out and sent it in because I serve on the Fair Housing Task Force. I'm the county's representative on the Fair Housing Task Force. And so I was required to fill one out. They want to know, Ryan, who you are, who's your spouse and your children. They want to know what property you own. They want to know what businesses you might have that operate in St. Lawrence County. And if you have a business that operates in St. Lawrence County, they want to know if you do business with the county. Do you do business with any business that does business with St. Lawrence County? They want to know, do you owe over $10,000 to anybody who does business with St. Lawrence County? And frankly, I don't know. Does City Corp, I got a credit card. Does City Corp do business with St. Lawrence County? I don't know. Of course, I don't know $10,000 either. But they want to know if anybody owes you more than $10,000. Anybody who works for the county or does business with the county owes you more than $10,000. And I'm going off the top of my head, so there might be another question or three that they're asking. It's a 5-page form. And there might be another question or two that they're asking that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. I considered it relatively invasive, but I don't own anything but my house. And so for me, it was easy to fill out. Nicole, you have a question or a comment?
Well, I just to speak to it, I think, it is primarily because we were dinged in the audit that these were not on file. And I think it's to make sure that we're not placing people on committees that then are using that committee position to leverage business and transactions and negotiations and contracts with the county. So people are not giving some kind of an edge. And John is right. It is a pretty lengthy form. But I will tell you that other than the specifics of your address and your children, it's none. I answer none to every single question. Most of them do not pertain to most people. And that is what I've heard from most of the legislators as well. We have to fill them out annually. I have to fill them out for Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority annually. And it's just to make sure really that there's not an ethical conflict between a position that you might have and business that the county is doing.
And are these kept confidential?
They are kept confidential. Yes, they go to the ethics board. Nobody else sees them.
Well, what's the consequence of not filling one out? Is it simply the possible removal from this committee, or is it potential that you're making an ethics violation and you could be in further trouble?
No, I think as far as I am aware, the only penalty might be at some point that you would be told that you need to leave the EMC. And
we get a guarantee of that?
Can I give you a guarantee on that?
Somebody give us a guarantee of that.
Hell no, I'm not a lawyer.
I'm the same thing with Rod.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. I mean, unless we can get a guarantee, that's absurd.
Hey, John and Ryan, this is Rod again. Let me just chime in here again. Look, I dealt with this a lot in the federal government. The problem with these kind of financial disclosure agreements, when you sign this thing, this is functionally an affidavit. Functionally. Will it stand in a court of law? Probably not, but you'll spend money on a lawyer making sure that it doesn't stand in a court of law. If you make a mistake on this, if you don't answer yes when you should have answered, if you answer no when you should have answered yes, even though you may not have known, you are still liable for that. Okay? So, I mean, I'm going to tell you, John, I dealt with this stuff in the federal government. I'm very, very sensitive to it.
Absolutely.
I'm not filling out this financial disclosure agreement. I'm making that statement right now in front of you and Nicole and everybody else.
I understand that, Rod.
If the BOL wants me off this committee, good. That's it. I'm gone. If they don't want me off this committee, don't expect for me to sign this thing. It ain't going to happen.
Okay. That's fine. As I said, each of us, and I include myself because I had to do it for the Fair Housing Task Force. Each of us need to make the decision that makes the most sense for us. And if somebody either decides to leave the EMC or is removed from the EMC as a result of this, to my mind, that would be a horrible outcome. But it's a requirement that the county is making. So do it or don't do it. The choice is yours.
John.
I'm
Yeah,
leaving
Don.
over it.
Yes, Mr. O'Shea.
I don't see why, because we're not a decision-making group, that should apply to us in any respect. Now, back 1,000 years ago, when I worked for the county, I dispensed a federal program through a state office as a county employee. So there was a lot of involvement there. We had strict rules about putting on someone on a program that was a relative, but only insofar as if we were a manager.
Yeah.
Not a counselor.
Yeah.
So I know things have changed since then, but the whole idea was so that you didn't give somebody special treatment.
Yeah.
And it was completely understandable. But again, that's completely different set of circumstances than what we're talking about now.
It is, Don. It is. And the ethics law as it is written for St. Lawrence County, and I've got it right here, I can send it to you if you want, says that you only have to fill this out if you are a member of a board who holds a policy-making position. And as the EMC, we don't make policy for the county. Now, the county planning board, which our office in Dakota helps the staff, they do make policy. They make recommendations that town boards may be bound by. So those people have had to fill out these financial disclosure forms for a number of years.
Right.
Yes,
I am
Nicole.
happy to bring up at the board meeting. I definitely understand where you're all coming from, and I support you in knowing that in my time, I've not seen you go to the board and hold them accountable for any policy that they make. We very rarely make recommendation to them, quite frankly. I am very, very happy to argue on your behalf and to ask Steve Button to review the policy and get a reason or a rationale as to why you should be subjected to this. I'm happy to do that for you.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Nicole.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Nicole. Greatly appreciate it.
All right. I have one other item for new business, and that is that this year is the 50th anniversary of the Environmental Management Council. I'd like to ask for 3 volunteers to serve as an ad hoc committee to plan what we want to do to observe the 50th anniversary of the EMC. And you don't have to speak up tonight, but I hope to have 3 volunteers by next month. Pat is 1. Thank you.
I'll be 1.
Sue is 1. Sue is 2. Thank you. All right, I will poll the members for a 3rd one, and then we will get working on some sort of, I don't care what it is, but I don't want to let the year go by without recognizing 50 years of work on environmental issues in the county. That's important.
And just a reminder that the Youth Advisory Board, the youth committee members would love to support your efforts this year in that. So you're going to have them to help with anything that you need with. They really, really want to support that mission. So
April is coming, April and May, and then we had talked to them about doing something in April and May on or around Earth Day. Yeah, good. All right. That's all I've got. Does anybody else have anything they want to? Yes, Herb.
Just a question, future business regarding the fish ladders in the dam. Do you see it being on the agenda? Is there a committee or is there another organization? I hope it didn't come across the wrong way to Kevin about, I mean, I'm highly supportive of fish ladders. I think it could be really helpful. And I would like to see something go forward. I didn't know if something was already planned with the EMC or what your thinking is on where does it stop? What's the next step?
All right, Herb, the Environment and Economy Committee has been discussing fish passageways and et cetera at Madrid, and as you heard tonight, possibly in Ogdensburg on the Oswegatchie River, et cetera. I would imagine that this will go back, that at their next meeting next month, we'll talk about the presentation tonight and such, and then they'll decide, do we want to proceed with this, or based on the information we've gotten, or do we want to put it down? Herb, we can make sure that you are notified of the Environment and Economy Committee, because committee meetings are open to the public. Whether you're on the EMC officially by then or not, you would be welcome to sit in on that meeting and participate if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
John.
Don, yes.
Question and a comment.
All right.
Question is, have we scheduled an EAB meeting for tomorrow?
Yes, there is, Don, and I put something in the mail to you, but clearly it didn't get there. As soon as I'm done here, I will call you and give you the call-in number.
It doesn't really make any difference because I have a medical appointment in Messina
Okay.
tomorrow.
All right.
So I won't be available at 9 o'clock.
Well, okay. But for those of you who are on the EAB task force, we are meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow by conference call. And I assume that you all got the meeting notice and have the phone number.
Is the EAB task force subject to this financial disclosure?
No, the EAB task force was not created by the Board of Legislators. And so it's an ad hoc committee. Since it wasn't created by the Board of Legislators, it's not subject to the ethics law provisions. Yes, Nicole.
Sorry, just the financial disclosure is not due until March 26th. So if be my recommendation that for now, maybe you hold off on submitting those, even if you did get the email, until I can speak with the Board of Legislators and the county attorney for clarification.
Thank you. That's an excellent idea.
You're welcome.
Nicole will be able to report back to us at our next month's EMC meeting.
So,
thank you.
John, I'd like to just ask Rod a question on that disclosure form. Rod, what would happen if you just didn't put anything on it, put NA for not applicable and sign your name and send it in?
Actually, Herb, I don't know. Like I said, whenever I've dealt with these before, it's because I was in a position where I was being paid for my services, either as a direct federal employee or as a contractor, as a civilian contractor under contract service to the federal government. And if you just put NA in there, I mean,
you're not.
They ask you for yes or no. They ask you for yes or no. Okay, and so if it's NA, you're saying no. Okay, and all I'm saying is that when I dealt with this with the federal government, the big thing that everybody was cautioned against was saying no if it could be a yes. If it could be a yes, then you answer yes and you explain it. All right. If you say no, then you're subject to an ethics violation. And like I said, will it stand up in court? The short answer is probably no, because you'll go in, you'll explain it, and you'll get off. But the long answer is you're going to end up paying some lawyers' fees for that. And I mean, that it just ain't worth. I mean, it was worth it when I was working for $160,000 a year. It ain't worth it when I'm doing this for nothing.
Yeah. And again, it's something that we'll all have to wrestle with, and we will look to hear from Nicole next month. Is there a message that we want to give to the Board of Legislators?
Yeah, get rid of this financial disclosure crap.
There we go.
Got it.
There we go.
Understood. I will definitely take care of that. Rod, if you haven't seen the email yet, and you all are on, I opened the email. I'm wondering if possibly they've used the email address that you would have first applied to the EMC on, and maybe not updated, because you are all listed in the email. But just to let you know, Rod, it's not even close to the financial disclosure that you have to do for governmental purposes for either the state or federal government. That takes hours to complete. It really is not even close to that. It really is as specific as, is there anybody that sits on the board or that is in contract with the county that you owe $10,000 or more to, or that owes $10,000 or more to you? That really is the span of it. And where do you work? That really is the span of it. It's not nearly as intense as the others, the state and federal financial disclosures are.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am committed to bringing this ship to dock by 8 o'clock, and we have less than 1 minute. So if there are any last comments, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Lance made the motion. Don O'Shea seconded. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
2.